Hi, I'm Kenneth WAJDA. I'm a professional photographer here in Colorado. Welcome to another one of my photography talks. Today I'm going to talk about a body. So this is a Leica M3. This isn't the lens it came with. It came with a little 53.5 Elmar collapsible, which I'm a big fan of. I use those on a 3F. I use them on an M3. But I'll just throw a 50mm lens on there just to have something on it so when I show it to you, it doesn't have a big body cavity staring at you. But this is a Leica M3 that I got in an estate sale. And this camera didn't work. It didn't advance. It's a Leica M3 double stroke, so it's an early version. It doesn't seem like the self-timer works. And they wanted $670 for it. And I said, that seems a little crazy, but I would go $300. And he kind of said, no, that's way too low. It was the first day of the sale. And then I walked around the rest of the sale, and before I left, I said, I still give you $300. And he said, okay. I had bought some other things from him, and he kind of knows me from the store. He's a guy who has a store in town, and then he also does estate sales. So he said, okay. So I took it right over to my repair guy, who repairs cameras for me, or will, fix a shutter if I have a problem. And he says, it's going to be 3 weeks. I'm like, that's okay. I might just resell it. It's worth more than $300 with the lens has got some value, the body's got some value, even as a parts camera I can get out of it. So I just thought, maybe it'll be a beater camera. Maybe it's a camera that I'll take places where it's going to get wet, it's going to get splashed or something. And maybe it's going to be one I'm just going to turn and sell to somebody else once it's been fixed up. And so he said it's going to be about 3 weeks. And he said, so big back order. Oh, it's okay, no rush. So then he finally calls me up and he says, oh, that camera's got a lot of problems. It has water damage. And it's not repairable. It's not the kind of camera that you should even bother with. I said, oh, what do I owe you for this bit of news that I'm not going to get the camera fixed and I'm going to have to pay you something for looking at it? And he said $65. And I said, okay. So I have $365 into it. But I can sell it on eBay, and they're selling for $450 for parts only on eBay. I'll still get out of it. And I'll have the second lens I can either keep or sell. So then he says, well, the workman is a young guy he's been training, and he would like to work on it and take it apart, and he would give me $125 for it. And I said, well, if he were to give me $265, that would cover your $65 repair fee, and I'd get $200 back and only lose $100. I'd do that, but I wouldn't go $125. It just seems like I can get more selling it broken on eBay. He said, okay. So I go in to go get it, pay him his $65. I have the cash. He hands me the camera. Remember when I took it in, the double stroke didn't work. It just didn't advance. And he said the viewfinder patch is really poor on it, so that's another reason why nobody would really want it, because you can't use it because it doesn't have a good viewfinder patch. And it doesn't have a good viewfinder patch. This camera is better if you use it with just zone focusing. But it worked fine. The advance was working. In fact, I was almost questioning, is this even my camera? Because the double stroke was working perfectly, and the shutter speeds were all changing and working. And I wasn't sure, was he trying to get a special deal for the workman so he'd have an M3 for very low cost? Was he going to fix it up and resell it? I don't really know. And I'm going to assume the guy was really going to just use it for a parts camera or to take apart. But I took it, and the first thing I did with it was put a raw film in it. And I shot a raw film with it, and I'll put some of the pictures down below, and they all came out perfectly. The one thing I noticed about the M3 double stroke, this one, is the frame lines are very thin. They're completely there. They're not overlapping in any way, but they're not very wide. So it seems like you could maybe get an extra frame out of this camera if you load it carefully and shoot your 0 frame. You might get 38 out of it. But in any case, this is a working M3. This is a camera, when I talked about maybe getting it splashed and getting some water on it, it's not one that, at that cost, you really have to worry about it too much. And I always say use the stuff. Use the stuff that's working. Don't worry about it. The viewfinder patch is dim. In bright light against a real contrasty subject, you can see it, but it's dim. And he said it wasn't fixable. I wouldn't put another dime into it. But I shot that whole roll with just zone focusing. Right now, you're 5 feet away from me. I can tell you're 5 feet away from me, and I can put this on 5 feet that quickly. I can tell, guesstimate, where 8 feet is and where 12 feet is, and if you're shooting outside, it's not that critical. If you're shooting inside, figure out, I always use, for me, a piece of paneling, a piece of a wood board. If you go to a lumber store and you buy a board, they come in 8-foot sections. So I always think, how many of these could I lay side by side before I got to that person? And if it's an 8-foot section or if it's a 16-foot section, I can kind of gauge. And you might have another way that you use to do zone focusing, but this seems like right now, with a dim viewfinder, I could probably get 6 for the body. They go for more than that with bright viewfinders, and then I still have the lens to either keep or sell. So listen to what's being offered, but also be aware that everything isn't always what it seems, or sometimes we don't know what it seems, or maybe I'm misinterpreting it and thing's a complete wreck and I shouldn't even run a raw film through it, but it worked fine. And I always think about these things are a box. They're a camera box. All they are is a holder for film. And so when I got it, I opened up the back and I looked through it and I was firing it off and I could see light hitting it at different amounts based on different shutter speeds. Well, that's all this thing is a shutter curtain and a box to hold the film. And as long as it's advancing the film, I couldn't see why it wouldn't work. And it did work. So a little bit investigative, a little bit of a awareness of how does things work, and if you get something back and they're saying it's not worth anything, but it's working, use it. That's my philosophy anyway. All right, that's today's photography talk. The perils of an M3. If you're enjoying these, hit the subscribe button. If you can support, hit the Patreon. I appreciate that so much, and thanks so much for watching. We'll talk photography again soon.